day after the Hamas surprise attack on Israel, security forces are now gaining full control of border communities attacked by terrorist commandos yesterday morning in more than 22 towns. Over 600 have been killed and some 1,900 wounded in the rampage against civilians and soldiers alike, with dozens of hostages taken to Gaza. The fighting is ongoing, with Hamas rockets fired into Israel today and ongoing Israeli strikes in Gaza. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
October 7th, 2023 will go down in infamy in Israel. 50 years and a day after the surprise attack by Arab nations in the 1973 Yom Kippur War, this surprise attack by Hamas terrorist groups from Gaza yesterday came on the Jewish holiday of Simchat Torah. Before 7 yesterday morning, Hamas terror groups launched a deadly assault on Israel with hundreds of Gaza terrorists infiltrating over 20 Israeli border communities. More than a day later, there were still terrorist gunmen in a few Israeli Gaza border towns. All known hostage situations which saw Israeli civilians held captive by Hamas gunmen in their towns were resolved overnight. The army and police forces killed terrorists and rescued their captives after standoffs in Sderot, Ofakim, and Kibbutz Be'eri, where full control was declared. Gunfights continued in Kfar Aza and Re'im. The Israeli Navy said it killed 5 Palestinian terrorists hiding in Zikim Beach this morning, close to the border with the Gaza Strip. Over 600 were killed and over 1,800 wounded, dozens kidnapped, taken into the Gaza Strip. Most of those taken hostage to Gaza have yet to be identified. The health ministry said 1,854 people were injured. 19 of them are in critical condition, 326 in serious condition, and 359 in moderate condition. The IDF today named 26 soldiers killed in the fighting. The army also said there were hundreds of dead terrorists and dozens captured.
כוחות צה"ל פעלו כל הלילה על מנת להביא להבטחת המרחב בעוטף, להרוג מחבלים ולהשתלט על כל מוקדי הלחימה. צה"ל הציג שליטה במוקדי החדירה מרצועת עזה לשטח מדינת ישראל. הכוחות הרגו בשטח מאות מחבלים.
Authorities began the evacuation of the Gaza border communities as the army assembled along the border for what is widely expected to be a period of warfare. IDF airstrikes hit 426 targets in Gaza, including tunnels, Hamas and Islamic Jihad infrastructure, and high-rise building housing Hamas assets. 100 immediate threats were hit. These included Hamas launch sites and munitions depots. The Israeli strikes have been continuing.
And it's not just Israel's south that is under attack. After yesterday's tragic terror attacks in southern Israel, northern Israel was also targeted overnight by another Iran-backed terror group, Hezbollah. Will this lead to a multi-front conflict? Let's take a look at the events of last night. The IDF reports that in the early morning, Hezbollah fired roughly a dozen mortars at Israeli positions in the Mount Dov area in what they called an act of solidarity with the Hamas attacks on Israel. No injuries were reported, though an IDF military site was hit. The IDF responded with artillery fire at the site of the mortar launches, as well as drone strikes on Hezbollah infrastructure. Sources report that the drone strike targeted the tent which Hezbollah pitched just a few months ago in what is Israeli territory, a move seen as an act of aggression by Hezbollah. In response, UNIFIL, the body responsible for peacekeeping on the Lebanese-Israel border, has urged restraint on both sides. However, UNIFIL has repeatedly proved less than effective in preventing Hezbollah aggression. Previously, UNIFIL did nothing when Hezbollah set up 2 tents within Israeli territory, despite it being their obligation under UN Resolution 1701 to keep Hezbollah from engaging in acts of terror against Israel. Additional challenges for UNIFIL also exist in this complex situation. Yesterday, footage was released showing Palestinians in Lebanon blocking the entrance to the border area of UNIFIL vehicles in support of the attacks against Israel. The IDF has stated they are prepared for the event of a further escalation with Hezbollah and will take whatever precautions necessary to protect Israeli lives. In Alexandria, an Egyptian policeman reportedly opened fire on a bus full of Israeli tourists today. Initial reports indicate that at least 2 Israelis were killed and several others injured in the attack. The attack took place at the Pompeii's Pillar tourist site in Alexandria. The gunman was arrested. Egyptian security forces quickly cordoned off the site. of the attack, and details are still emerging. Emergency services took the wounded Israelis to the hospital for treatment. While the escalation in the north is certainly concerning, Israel's south continues to be bombarded by rockets, and hundreds of Israelis are unaccounted for as the death toll climbs. As the situation continues to develop on the ground, here to speak with us is IDF Colonel Dr. Danny Tirza, of the former head of the Strategic Command for the IDF's Central Command. Danny, thank you so much for being with us. I think the most obvious question to ask from a military perspective is, how did this happen in the first place? Do we have any idea as to how Hamas was able to carry out such an attack at scale?
Well, we really don't know how everything fell down. There are three levels that have to give the right award. First of all, it's the intelligence, and I don't know how they couldn't give us the right alert, but that is something that we have to search after the war. The second thing was the surveillance forces and the infrastructure that we have on the ground, that they have to see and to give us the right alert on the ground if something happens. And the third level is the forces that have to react when they see something and when they see that something is getting wrong. And all these three levels fell down. We understand that there was a great problem of command when they attacked first the headquarters of the Israeli forces near Gaza Strip, but that's not that's not the right answer. We will know everything, but that after the war. Now we have to concentrate about giving the right answer to what's going on the ground.
Now, give us an update on the general security situation. Is there still a threat of Hamas terrorists who have infiltrated the south? And is the rest of Israel at risk from this as well?
As we know, in this hour, Israeli forces are in every village around Gaza Strip. The forces are on the ground, but they are going from house to house to be sure that there are not still terrorists in these Israeli villages around Gaza. At the same time, the Hamas is trying to let more forces through the broken fence to Israel, but there are forces on the ground and we kill them all. Even just the last hour, they tried to catch a car from Gaza to the north, but the Israeli police forces stopped them and killed them.
Now, the IDF has targeted over 500 sites and hundreds of Palestinians have already died. What are the targets in Gaza and what is the IDF's objective overall?
We have to understand that this situation is a new situation. It's not something, another round between us and Gaza. We have to change the whole situation and the whole formula in Gaza. Till today, we thought that the best way is to have some region in Gaza. We didn't like the Hamas to be the region there, but they were our address that they will rule their own people. Now we understand that they cannot do this job, and we have to clean Gaza from the Hamas and to let the people live there normally with some hope for the future. Because we cannot give the right to change the life in both sides to these murders and extreme people. It's like the 9/11 of Israel, you know, when in one moment you hear something and you understand that you have to change the whole concept.
Let's discuss the north a little bit more. Hezbollah, with the backing of Iran, has gotten involved. Now, how likely is the Hezbollah threat to escalate, and how is the IDF approaching this issue?
First of all, we know that Iran is behind everything, and we know that Iran wants the Hezbollah to take place, and not only Hezbollah, then the Israeli Arabs as well, and the Palestinians in the West Bank. They want them all to take part in this war against Israel, but we are ready for it. Israel called for hundreds of thousands of Israeli reserve soldiers Some of them were sent to the north, some of them are sent to Gaza, and the other are ready to every mission that we have to face. Israel is strong when we are together, and the Palestinians didn't understand that this situation make us stronger, because when we have a threat, we are all together for one mission, and that mission is the life of the Israelis here, and Israel will be strong again in a very short time.
Well, we're out of time, but I want to thank you so much for joining us for this update. IDF Colonel Dr. Danny Tirza, be safe.
Thank you.
Experience the power of truth with ILTV News. If you're looking for quality content and captivating visuals, join our news community and become an integral part of our team as we embark on a mission to unveil the real Israel, dismantling the web of lies and misinformation that surround reporting on Israel. By subscribing to ILTV News, you will not only have access to the latest updates, but you will also amplify our message, creating a ripple effect that carries the truth far and wide. Subscribe today and help reshape the narrative. Available on the web, Android, and Apple.
Well, as Israelis continue to deal with rocket fire, Israel is taking strong action against terror groups in Gaza. Speaking to the nation, Prime Minister Netanyahu said that Israel was at war with Hamas and vowed that Israel would avenge the surprise attack on Israel.
חמאס רוצה לרצוח את כולנו. זה אויב שרוצח ילדים ואימהות בבתים שלהם, במיטות שלהם. אויב שחוטף קשישים, ילדים, נערות. רוצחים שטובחים ושוחטים באזרחינו, בילדינו, שבסך הכל יצאו לבלות בחג.
Promising merciless war on Hamas, Netanyahu says Israel will avenge this black day.
מה שקרה היום לא נראה בישראל, ואני אדאג שזה לא יקרה יותר. הממשלה כולה מתייצבת מאחורי ההחלטה הזאת. צה"ל יפעיל מיד את כל עוצמתו כדי להשמיד את יכולות חמאס. נכה בהם עד חורמה, וננקום בעוצמה על היום השחור הזה שהם עוללו למדינת ישראל ולאזרחיה.
Vowing to smash the terror group's capabilities after unprecedented surprise attack, the Prime Minister warned Gazans to get out now.
Well, as Israel battles against Hamas and the entire country is under threat, Israelis both in the government and as private citizens are coming together to ensure media accuracy in reporting, as well as ensuring that Israel's side of the story is told. In the past, Israel has struggled with biased coverage and coordinated anti-Israel campaigns on social media, both state-initiated and from the grassroots level. In fact, Israel's government has faced tremendous criticism over its failure to relay accurate information and responses to the public over controversial events, such as when Palestinians falsely claimed Al-Aqsa Mosque was under attack. As Israelis are facing unbelievable scenes of devastation, is the narrative accurately depicting the war crimes that are taking place against Israeli civilians? Joining us to speak about Israel's public diplomacy efforts is Israeli Minister of Public Diplomacy, Galit Distal Atbarian. Galit, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Emily. Thank you so much for having me.
In terms of public diplomacy and the narrative, what are you seeing on media and social media, and do you think it's having an impact?
Well, the social media today has a huge impact. I think that the traditional media is getting weaker, and the social media, the public, are creating the true narrative or the state of mind of how the West perceive what's going on now in Israel. And I'm here to change the game, because we've seen and we've saw it for many decades now, that the West turns more to the Palestinian narrative and less to the truth, to the reality, to what the Israelis are actually going through here. And my mission these days, these horrible days, after a massacre, I don't know any other word to describe it, to change this game, to change the platform, to change the relations between the power that the Palestinians have in the social media and the Israeli has. And we are initiating now more and more short clips that demonstrate the massacre we have been through, the tragedy that we have been through, because I'm seeing now the media, the West, in interviews, they're showing the response that the Israeli have now, that the IDF has now, and not showing what happened a day before. And what happened a day before was medieval ISIS methods. It's unbelievable that in the 21st century, we see these kind of methods. Young women are being, I don't know, stripped from their clothes, murdered, then transferred by, I don't know, cars to Gaza.
I wanted to ask you a bit more about that. Can you detail some of the war crimes that we've actually been seeing in these videos with maybe a few examples of what we've seen?
I don't know, a little child is kept in her room with a few Hamas terrorists, monsters, and they just shot her sister, and she's asking them, where's my sister? And they're laughing at her. I saw a mother, this just got into my brain and I cannot wash it. This image of a woman, a young mother holding her two babies, little cute red-head babies. One is 1 year old, the other looks like 2 or 3 years old. And she's holding them and she's scared and she doesn't know where she's going to, and she's led to Gaza Strip. I saw an elderly woman that sits with a weapon. The terrorists that captured her forced her to hold a weapon and to mark V while smiling to the camera, and then they post it on TikTok, and they're so amused by it. And also the sight that we see in Gaza Strip, I mean, huge amount of people are torturing, violating, dead casualties on the floor, kicking them. It shows that it's not only the terrorists, it's not only the Hamas terrorist monsters that infiltrated Israel, it's also the mass, it's also the public. It's unbelievable, and the West should know and acknowledge the truth. This is a war between good and bad, between a humanitarian, democratic country and a country that is under incitement, consistent incitement, that has a huge thirst for Jewish blood. The truth is that this is not a war over territory. This is a religious war. And the crimes that they're committing right now need to be shown to the world.
Now, you have faced some criticism in the past for inaction on controversial events. What is the ministry doing different this time, and how has it been impactful so far?
Yeah, well, it's a new office. I'm building it basically from scratch. I just got the budget on June. All the other ministries had their budget from January. And it's Israeli bureaucracy, Israeli government bureaucracy. It's very, very difficult to initiate any kind of procedure. It takes months. I didn't invent it, but I'm doing whatever I can in order to create some kind of reaction, not in very idealistic terms, I must say, but I have a lot of people, good people that are volunteering here, and it shows only the strength of Israel. A lot of creative people, you know, editors, animation people that are not necessarily pro this government, are coming to give help, and this shows the great strength of the Israeli people, that once we are in danger, we are united, and we're doing whatever we can to defend ourselves. And it gives me a very good perspective of what happened here in the past months with the demonstration. Once it comes to a threat in our lives, we're all combined together. We are strong, and we will prevail.
Well, Galid, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us and sharing more about how Israeli supporters can get the truth out about what's happening and why they should. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily.
In the aftermath of yesterday's onslaught, Israel faces the grim task of identifying the more than 600 dead, informing the victims' families, followed by hundreds of funerals around the country. From ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
The victims were murdered during the day-long rampage of terrorists infiltrating towns, rampaging through military positions, shooting travelers on roads, and firing thousands of rockets in a wide swath of the country. There were also casualties from the thousands of rockets. Israel today faced the grim task of identifying more than 600 dead, informing the victims' families, followed by hundreds of funerals that will take place around the country. Dozens of young rave party attendees were mowed down as they fled through fields of high grass. Residents of kibbutzim and towns were overrun by Hamas gunmen and were killed, along with a senior officer rushing to the front lines. 15 were murdered in the community of Netiv HaAsara. The head of the Regional Council of Shara Negev, Ofer Libstein, was killed trying to defend homes against Hamas terrorist invaders. Even as gun battles continue early this morning, names of the victims of yesterday's attack are being released, and their stories are starting to be told.
As Israel continues battling terrorist organizations in Gaza and in southern Israel, world leaders and celebrities alike have expressed unwavering support for Israel in response to the attacks. Let's take a closer look. After Israel's war with Gaza terrorists erupted on October 7th, world leaders have shown an unusual outpouring of support for Israel. President Biden himself made a statement expressing complete solidarity with Israel.
In this moment of tragedy, I want to say to them and to the world and to terrorists everywhere that the United States stands with Israel. We will not ever fail to have their back. We'll make sure that they have the help their citizens need and they can continue to defend themselves.
Similarly, European world leaders, including UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, French President Emmanuel Macron, and German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier have all pledged support for the Jewish state. Beyond world leaders, Israel has also received an outpouring of support. On Saturday, the European Commission building lit up with the Israeli flag in solidarity. In Berlin, the Brandenburg Gate was also illuminated with the Israeli flag. And in New York, the Empire State Building turned blue and white to support Israel. Celebrities took to social media as well to show support for Israelis facing Hamas terrorism. Amongst the many who posted messages of support for Israel were Sacha Baron Cohen, Kylie Jenner, Kris Jenner, Amy Schumer, Jamie Lee Curtis, and Israel's own Gal Gadot. While Israel has historically faced criticism when defending itself, the global support is clearly with Israel as it battles against the Islamic extremism that's overtaken the Gaza Strip. In recent months, Israel has faced ongoing political turmoil over judicial reform. But are the tides turning as Israel faces a war? Yesterday, Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke with opposition leader Yair Lapid and national unity leader Benny Gantz on the formation of a national emergency government.
Netanyahu has confirmed that the matter of a national emergency government was raised. His Likud party said that the potential emergency government would be along the lines of the Levi Eshkol government that then opposition leader Menachem Begin joined before the Six-Day War in 1967. A statement issued by National Unity said that Gantz was considering entering such a government for the duration of the war, but insisted that the government would deal with security challenges alone, and in a manner which would allow substantive partnership and influence over decision-making in relevant forums. Gantz also told Netanyahu that regardless of any decision over an emergency government, he would receive his full backing for any responsible and determined security action. Opposition leader Yair Lapid said for a new government to succeed, Netanyahu will need to boot the far right from coalition, saying, "I'm willing to put aside our differences and form an emergency, narrow, professional government," insisting that it be different than the composition of the current cabinet. Israel's enemies appear to have underestimated the political unity of Israel when faced with war.